what I'm doing here and can hear. Hello?
Hello.
Okay. Kindly confirm that you're seeing my screen and you can hear properly what's going on.
Yes, we can.
Thank you.
Lecture, I did look at, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our lecture series in scholarly writing for publication. As you're aware, we have already gone through two series. I did give an overview of what scholarly writing and publication is all about. In our second lecture, I did look at the science behind scholarly writing and publication, but without really going into details, but trying to look at the specific terminologies that are used in the scientific process that generates research outcomes that are documented and communicated to the wider scholarly audience, ladies and gentlemen. In our lecture number 3, ladies and gentlemen, we now go into details of scholarly writing for publication, but more specifically, looking at structure and the contents of a research paper. But in this lecture 3, we'll be looking at, we'll limit ourselves to conceptual papers and look at the structure and contents of a conceptual paper. Now, welcome, and I want you to stay and keep relaxed throughout this lecture. I do not want you to be stressed, and hopefully we'll be able to understand what the contents of a research paper are. So, ladies and gentlemen, since we are dealing with the conceptual papers, I want to say that conceptual papers report the process and the outcome of a research study that does not collect and analyze fresh empirical data. And that's what we discussed in our lecture number 2. We looked at the conceptual papers and we looked at what we call empirical papers. And we did observe in our lecture 2 that conceptual papers, they document or even report the process and outcome of a research study that does not involve the collection and analysis of fresh empirical data. Now, these papers do not test using freshly collected and analyzed empirical data, a set of hypotheses. But these papers may undertake conceptual work of various types, including proposing a new set of propositions and or what you may call hypothesis, propose a new theory or theoretical model containing a representation of a theory in pictorial form, and provide a comprehensive review of work and summarization of literature on a particular topic, and provide a comprehensive review of literature on a particular topic and outline the research issues that need to be examined or analyzed, ladies and gentlemen. And again, provide a comprehensive review of the research that has occurred in a particular period. For example, the previous 5 years, previous 10 years, in the last decade, the last 2 decades, and outline the directions for future research, ladies and gentlemen. And these are conceptual papers or research papers. Now, of the various forms of a conceptual paper can take, papers proposing a new set of propositions or a theoretical model may be the most common form of conceptual papers appearing in academic journals, ladies and gentlemen. And that's why we talk about the structure and the content of only this form of conceptual paper, and we attempt to discuss under the conceptual paper category in this what you need to be doing as a researcher to really come up with a conceptual paper that will be presented for publication, ladies and gentlemen. So for us to look at the structure and the contents of a conceptual paper, I will present this on the screen, and I'm sure now you can see what the structure is like. The conceptual paper typically contains the following aspects. You will find an abstract. An abstract is part of the conceptual paper. You'll find an introduction, ladies and gentlemen. Specification of a theory or a proposition is another part, as you see on the screen here. Discussion, ladies and gentlemen, and then closing paragraph. And then thereafter you have references, ladies and gentlemen. So what I'm going to do in this lecture is to take you through the various components that form the structure of a conceptual paper, with an objective that at the end of this lecture, you will be able to start working on conceptual papers and send them to the editors of journals for possible publication, ladies and gentlemen. And it is possible for you to do this. And later on, if you really want to go ahead, you can actually design an instrument, go collect data, and then transform the conceptual paper into an empirical paper, ladies and gentlemen. So the nature and contents are covered under each of the parts that I've just given you. It is repeated here in detail, and these are the things that I'm going to discuss. So let's start with the abstract. I'm sure you are still seeing the structure on the screen here. Now, in the abstract, ladies and gentlemen, the abstract of a paper provides an overview of purpose. An abstract of a paper provides the process and outcome of the research work described in that particular paper. And it is provided as a distinct part of the paper, and it is separated from the rest of the paper text, ladies and gentlemen. So the abstract will always be there. And sometimes you may even think that there's no connection between the abstract and the main paper, but it is always there, and you must always produce that abstract. Now, in a printed research paper, the abstract is provided immediately below the paper title and the author details and before the main text of the paper. Now, also, as you can see, there are no explicit transition statements at the end of the abstract leading to the main paper text that begins below the abstract, ladies and gentlemen. As a result, the abstract remains as a standalone and a distinct unit of the text separated from the main text of the paper. Now, journal articles typically specify a word limit for the abstract. And for example, some journals will say that your abstract should not exceed beyond a maximum of 100 words. Others, they give you a word range between 100 to 250 words for the abstract. Now, it really depends on the journal. I know that journals in the Emirates, they will give you a structure that you must follow. And I'll be talking about this structure later on, but possibly not under this lecture. But I just want to encourage you to go and pick any article from any journal under the Emirate Publishing House, and you'll be able to see these things, ladies and gentlemen. So the abstract will always have, and just below the abstract, ladies and gentlemen, on a separate line, a few keywords related to the paper topic need to be listed and identified with the heading keywords. So those, and actually most paper will give you a maximum of 6 keywords that must be provided. Now, in light of these features, ladies and gentlemen, and in writing an abstract, it may help to be concise in writing and still describe the purpose, process, and outcome of the study in a manner that provides a standalone and meaningful description of the study. And as an abstract includes aspects such as the study process and outcomes, it will be appropriate to write the abstract after the complete documentation of the other parts of the research paper. And I can give you a hypothetical example of the abstract for you to understand what I'm talking about. And I'm going to feature that and show it here on the screen so that you understand how an abstract looks like. I have given you an abstract here that has less than 130 words. So the author, sorry, not the author, the editor of the paper gives a specification of between 100 to 250 words. So I'm giving you one that was written by a researcher who gave 127 words. So as you can see, this is typically how the abstracts are written. And let's read together what is appearing on the screen here. And I think you'll be able to appreciate what we are talking about. This paper specifies propositions to explain the occurrence of employees' helping behaviors in organizations. It focuses on one specific category of antecedents, employees' work attitudes of helping behaviors. It covers 7 work-related attitudes of employees as potential antecedents. These work attitudes are courage-related commitment, affective commitment, and continuous commitment, job involvement, pay satisfaction, satisfaction with supervision, and satisfaction with co-workers. It specifies propositions describing relationships between each of these 7 work-related attitudes and helping behaviors. It specifies an integrated model that incorporates the 7 propositions in order to provide a comprehensive representation of the positive influences of work attitudes on employee helping behaviors. It also outlines this integrated model for practice. Ladies and gentlemen, remember, we are handling conceptual papers. This is how an abstract for a conceptual paper looks like. And you will typically find abstracts of this nature, and this appears before you actually start writing your introduction. And the keywords in this paper, as you can see, are listed below. You've got commitment, job involvement, job satisfaction, and helping behaviors, ladies and gentlemen. So that is the abstract, ladies and gentlemen. Allow me to go to the next part of the conceptual paper, the next component that constitutes that. Right, and that's the introduction, ladies and gentlemen. In some papers, the work background is acceptable, while others, not some papers, but some journals may not like, for instance, background, but they may want the word introduction. So it really depends on the journal where you are sending your manuscript for publication. So as you can see in this part of the conceptual paper, and this is now the introduction, ladies and gentlemen, the topic of the paper is specified, and the topic must come come early in the introduction section. Further, the specific research question or research issue within the topic that the paper focuses on is also described. And in fact, if you want to present the research gap is also presented in this section of the introduction. Now, the place and significance of the research question in the light of the existing research on the particular topic is also documented. So this is important information that must come up, that must be presented in the background or introduction, ladies and gentlemen. And of course, the other thing that must come early in the introduction is what the research paper specifically does in addressing the research question, right? So this must be outlined. For instance, a conceptual paper might propose new concept definitions. For example, a conceptual paper may draw on premises from existing literature. For example, a conceptual paper may apply systematic reasoning to the premises. For example, a conceptual paper may specify propositions using the premises and reasoning, ladies and gentlemen. So this process of conceptual research, which may also be referred to as theorization or theory development or theory building, carried out in the subsequent parts of the paper, is also briefly described in the introduction chapter or introduction part, ladies and gentlemen. So the introduction part of a conceptual paper will document the purpose of the paper in terms of the research question. It focuses on the significance of addressing the research question and the process adopted for theorizing in the subsequent part of the paper to address the research question, ladies and gentlemen. So what I'm going to do now, ladies and gentlemen, is to give you a hypothetical example that describes how a typical introduction looks like. And this is a hypothetical example of the text in the introduction section. And I want you to, again, move along with me, and I hope you'll be able to follow through. So you can still see this on the screen because I want us to move together so that you understand. This hypothetical example goes as follows, that this paper examines employees helping behaviors in organizations. Researchers, for example, Bavris, 1992, Clifford, 1995, have noted that helping behaviors are critical for organizational function. Now, while existing research has focused mainly on studying the consequences of employee helping behaviors in organizations, researchers, for example, Clemens 1997, Maxwell 1996, have noted that research needs to examine the antecedents of helping behavior. This paper addresses this gap in the existing research on helping behaviors by specifying the relation between one category of antecedents, employee work attitudes, and employee helping behaviors. It covers 7 work-related attitudes of employees, namely culturative commitment, affective commitment, continuous commitment, job involvement, pay satisfaction, satisfaction with the supervision, and satisfaction with the co-workers. It specifies 7 propositions depicting the relationship between one of these 7 employee work attitudes and employee helping behaviors in organizations. It depicts an integrated model that incorporates the relationship between the relationship specified in these 7 propositions. This paper is organized as follows. It first provides a review of the existing research on employees helping behaviors. It then points out the need for further research on antecedents of employee helping behaviors. It then reviews the existing specifications of the concept employees helping behaviors and adopts a particular specification of employees helping behaviors. Subsequently, it describes the various categories of possible antecedents of employees helping behaviors and indicates that employees' work attitude is an important category of antecedents whose relationship with employees, the employees helping behaviors has not been specified in existing research. Next, drawing on the existing body of knowledge, it identifies 7 work attitudes for specifying their relationship with employees helping behaviors. Subsequently, drawing on the existing literature, it describes theorizing for specifying relationships between each of these 7 antecedents and employees helping behaviors, and for depicting an integrated model incorporating the relation between reflected in these 7 propositions. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, it describes the limitations of this paper and its implications for future research and practice. So this is really how the introduction looks like. And this is a sample from one of the conceptual papers that were published in the literature, ladies and gentlemen. So that is how introductions are written. And you need to know exactly what is placed in there. But the most important thing is the research gap. And then, of course, the propositions that developed and certainly later on moved to another part of this conceptual paper that we call specification of a theory or propositions. And that is part number 3 of the conceptual paper. And part number 3, specification of theory or propositions, is very important because this first part of the paper brings out what we call theory building. And of course, once you go to the empirical paper, if you must collect data from the field, then we go to another component of research that we call theory testing, ladies and gentlemen. But since we are dealing with theory building, and this is the third part, specification of a theory or propositions, this part of the conceptual paper, ladies and gentlemen, describes the core research process, which certainly is referred to as theory building or theorizing carried out in the paper or the manuscript that you're writing. And theory building typically involves identification of premises, for example, assumptions, for example, principles, and so on, from the existing body of knowledge or from the existing literature. And of course, applying some form of logical reasoning to these aspects in order to suggest the resulting conclusions in the form of conjectures and propositions or hypotheses. Now, these conclusions, ladies and gentlemen, are referred to as propositions or hypotheses. For instance, as a hypothetical example, a paragraph in this part of a conceptual paper may read as follows. Again, I'm going to give you something here on the board for you to understand how you can actually specify a theory, or you can go about theory building and be able to convince your readers that you have something worth saying and you have a reason why you should be listened to, ladies and gentlemen. So this is an example. Again, look at the screen here, and on the screen, I'm sure you can see something that you can see text that has been reproduced. So, for example, let's read together. Lewis 2000 indicates that employee commitment can take two forms, namely affective commitment and cultivative commitment. Now, Troubling 2002 suggests that cultivative commitment of an employee reflects an employee's concern for the likely rewards for himself from his contribution to the organization. Research, for example, by Hamis 2004, Kelter 2003, has found a positive relationship between employees' cultivative commitment and their concern for rewards. Further, the existing literature, for example, Alfred 2003, Cooper 2000, Jackie 2005, and Davinscon 1977, suggests that when employees are concerned about their own rewards, they are unlikely to perform helping behaviors in an organization. Now, Bruton 1993 has suggested that the more an employee is concerned about his own rewards, the more he will focus on those activities that are rewarded by an organization. So the behaviors that focus on helping coworkers are not rewarded explicitly in organizations. Now, the preceding discussion discusses the employee's calculated commitment. The preceding discussion suggests that employees' calculated commitment will reduce the likelihood of their performing helping behaviors. Based on this, it is posited that proposition 1, employees' calculated commitment will have a negative relationship with employee helping behavior. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is a part of the paper that has been reproduced for you to understand what we mean by specification of a theory or a specification of propositions, ladies and gentlemen. So, as you can see in an actual conceptual paper, ladies and gentlemen, the description associated with the specification of a proposition will be different in content because the extent of the literature reviewed, the type of literature reviewed, and of course the type and the extent of literature review documented, and the extent of the description pertaining to theorizing would differ from one researcher to another researcher, and from one topic area to another topic area. However, ladies and gentlemen, in general, usually the text associated with the specification of a proposition is likely to take a form similar to the one that I've just described. And in a conceptual paper, which specifies multiple propositions, as most of the propositions specifying papers typically do, separate text of the nature described or discussed a few minutes ago in the hypothetical example that I gave you certainly will be associated with the specification of each individual propositions, ladies and gentlemen. So that's why in a conceptual paper, in a conceptual paper that typically specifies a theoretical model containing multiple propositions. The text similar to that presented a few minutes ago is associated with each proposition in the theoretical model, ladies and gentlemen. And a collection of such texts associated with multiple propositions constitutes the core content of this form of conceptual paper, ladies and gentlemen. So that's why we need to sit and discuss and see how these things are conceptualized and how they are presented so that you're able to write a paper and send it to the reviewers or editors of journals, ladies and gentlemen. So let's go now to another part, discussion. And you have that section within the conceptual paper. Now, this part of the paper can contain various aspects, ladies and gentlemen. And as you can see, first in this part of the paper, the conclusions emerging from theorizing done for individual propositions are certainly and typically presented or typically specified. And sometimes individual propositions can be integrated into the overall theoretical model. A theoretical model that contains multiple propositions depicting different connections in the overall theoretical model, ladies and gentlemen. So in such cases, a description of the resulting overall theoretical model can be contained in the discussion section or discussion part of the paper. And thereafter, there is a section that outlines the directions, ladies and gentlemen, that future research can explore based on the specifications of propositions or the theoretical model in the paper. Now, this description can indicate how the concepts contained in the propositions can be measured. And for this, it can indicate that scales for measuring the concepts are either available in the existing literature or can be developed without unreasonable difficulty, ladies and gentlemen. Then it can document as to how future research can benefit by undertaking empirical research to examine the support for the relationship contained or relationships contained in the propositions, ladies and gentlemen. It can also state, ladies and gentlemen, how future research can benefit by doing conceptual research and coming out as implications from the propositions and or theory outlined in the paper, ladies and gentlemen. It may also point out specific research questions that future research or future conceptual research can examine. And thereafter, the implications for practice are described, ladies and gentlemen. So these implications are very important because they do bring out those particular things which are very important, ladies and gentlemen. So therefore, the implications for practice are described. And here the paper provides, again, this conceptual paper provides a description of how the practice in a particular area may benefit from the conceptual inputs coming from the theoretical model developed in the paper and also from the empirical knowledge that may result, ladies and gentlemen, resulting from the empirical studies that would assess empirical support for the propositions specified in the paper. So it becomes apparent and important for the researcher to be aware of the fact that the first part of the the first part of the research paper is usually a conceptual part that constitutes theory building. And of course, later in the paper, limitations, if any, of the research may be discussed in this part. And of course, we are talking about the discussion part, right? Either before or after the description of research and practice implication. Now, what I'm going to do, ladies and gentlemen, is again to give you a hypothetical example for us to follow. And I'm going to show this on the screen. I'm sure you can see this part, this description or this text, ladies and gentlemen. So join me to read so that we read together this text, ladies and gentlemen. So as you can see, this paper has specified 7 propositions describing relationships between employees' helping behaviors, and each of the 7 antecedents, namely employees' cultivative commitment, affective commitment, continuous commitment, job involvement, pay satisfaction, satisfaction with the supervision, satisfaction with the co-workers. All these antecedents reflect employees' work-related attitudes. Thus, the overall theoretical model emerging from the 7 propositions specified in this paper indicates the nature of effects of employees' work attitudes on employees' helping behaviors in organizations. These 7 propositions depict a comprehensive set of relationships between employees' work attitudes and employees' helping behaviors in organizations. Through the specification of these relationships, it addresses an important gap in existing literature or existing research. The specification of 7 propositions in this paper suggests certain directions for future research. First, the future research can carry out empirical studies to examine empirical support for the propositions specified in this paper. Second, the paper focused on only one category of antecedents, employee work attitudes, and posited a set of relationships between these antecedents and employees' helping behaviors. Now, future research can carry out further conceptual work to specify a relationship between other categories of antecedents and employees' helping behaviors. For instance, employees' perception of organizational features such as procedural justice, distributive justice, and organizational support can be another category of antecedents that future research can focus on. Similarly, employee personality-related variables is another category of antecedents that future research could focus on to specify propositions depicting relationships between these antecedents and employees' helping behaviors. That specification of propositions in this paper provides direction for both future conceptual research and empirical research. Ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, the text is quite long, so I'll just skip those other parts and move to the last section of the text. This paper, however, has some limitations. First, it focuses only on one category of antecedents, namely employee work attitudes. It does not include other categories of antecedents, such as employee perceptions of organizational features and employee personality related. Now, because of its focus on only one category of antecedents, it provides only a partial explanation of the reality of employees' helping behaviors. Second, it adopts a particular definition of the concept of employees' helping behaviors in organizations specified in the stream of research that views helping behaviors as employees' non-reward receiving activity in organizations. Recently, some researchers, for example, Melos and the rest, have suggested that helping behaviors in organizations could occur for a variety of reasons, such as altruism, expectation of reward, agree to reciprocate, etc., etc., etc. Right, so the last sentence reads, the first of these 2 limitations can be overcome by the future research that specifies relationships of other categories of antecedents with employees' helping behaviors, as suggested earlier in one of the directions for future research. So, ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, that is a section that I told you that is very important in the conceptual paper, and we call that a discussion section, ladies and gentlemen. Remember, the third aspect was specification of theory, or what we call propositions, ladies and gentlemen. So now we can move to the 5th part of the conceptual paper that we call the closing paragraph. And ladies and gentlemen, I will also close with the closing paragraph, and this will be the end of this lecture. Possibly in our lecture 4, we'll look at another type of research that we shall call empirical research, and related to, again, what we call thesis and dissertations. So in the closing paragraph of the conceptual paper, ladies and gentlemen, we note that a conceptual paper can contain a closing paragraph as the last paragraph. And this paragraph can briefly summarize the purpose, it can summarize the process, it can summarize the outcome of the conceptual research described in the paper, ladies and gentlemen. And I think in this case, for us to understand exactly what we are talking about in this closing paragraph. Let me just again give you a text that we can read together on the screen here. The text reads as follows. This paper points out that existing research has indicated the need for explaining the occurrence of employees helping behaviors. For addressing this research needs, it chose to focus on work-related attitudes as a category of potential antecedents of helping behaviors. It focused on 7 work-related attitudes. It specified 7 propositions and an integrated model depicting the relationship between each of these 7 antecedents and employees helping behaviors. These 7 propositions may provide a comprehensive representation of the likely influence of work attitudes on employees helping behaviors. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's an example of the concluding sentence, concluding paragraph in your conceptual paper. The last part of the paper, ladies and gentlemen, is references. We need references. The journal articles that you have read, the scholarly articles, we want to understand what has informed the paper that you are presenting. And this section of references lists references for all the documents cited in the paper, ladies and gentlemen. And journals typically recommend a particular format or structure for listing the references. Please pay attention to these things. If they are using the Chicago style of referencing, use Chicago. If they are recommending the Harvard style of referencing, use the Harvard. If they're recommending the Harvard style of referencing, sorry, not Harvard, but APA, American Psychological Association style of referencing, do so. If they are recommending the Oxford, please go ahead and do that. So journals typically recommend particular formats, and please follow these formats closely. And the details of providing citations for various works and listings in papers can be found on the internet and the various books. And of course, you need also to note at this material time that software packages which can help us to come up with the sort of citations and references are provided. The EndNote software plus a number of other software packages. Before I conclude the discussion and this lecture, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to give you an exercise. I want to give you an exercise which relates to the structure and content of the conceptual paper. Now that we have gone through what a conceptual paper is, we have also gone through the various parts that constitute the conceptual paper. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to go to the various journals, go to the various publishing houses on the internet, depending on the area and subject and topic that you want to pursue. Go and download conceptual papers, at least 5 conceptual papers in your area or discipline of study. Right after downloading these papers, try to read the conceptual paper and identify the parts of the conceptual paper that I've just given you, ladies and gentlemen. And of course, if you go through this may help you to see how various individual parts of the conceptual paper coherently fit together in a complete conceptual paper. And in light of this, ladies and gentlemen, as an exercise to enhance understanding, you now identify a conceptual paper published in a journal, and I've asked you to identify many conceptual papers and read these journal articles or these conceptual papers, ladies and gentlemen. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you have benefited from our discussion today, which specifically centered around conceptual papers. And in our lecture 3, we are concerned with the structure and contents of a research paper, but this research paper is what we have referred to as a conceptual paper. And of course, the various parts of this conceptual paper that we have seen, which includes 1, the abstract, number 2, the introduction of the paper, number 3, specification of a theory, ladies and gentlemen, or propositions. 4 is a discussion. 5 is the closing paragraph. and 6 references, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for attending this lecture on scholarly writing for publication. And it has been an opportunity and a pleasure for us to meet and discuss. I wish you a nice time. I can only say, ladies and gentlemen, stay well and stay safe. Have a nice time. Bye. We meet again in our lecture 4 when we attempt to look at empirical papers and then dissertation and thesis presentations. Thank you very much. Have a nice time. Bye.
Wow. Many thanks to Professor Joseph Ntai for this very wonderful piece of work. I would like to draw your attention to YouTube. Go to YouTube and I think just go and look for Joseph Ntai. Professor Joseph Ntai, you'll be able to have a number of pieces of work that he has done there, and that will help you if you need more of this work that he has done. So I thought today that we would take some time and give opportunity to those people who have gone past the level of proposal. I keep repeating this statement that we are at different stages. Some people just started yesterday, others are still battling with writing their proposals, others are still reading literature. But there are those who have gone past all these stages, they are now doing their data analysis and so on. But also you are reminded that as a PhD student, before you graduate, you must have some papers published. And so today I thought that maybe it's very important for us to bring on board those people who are at this stage of writing papers and data analysis. So that's why I went and looked at this work and shared with us. Now, what I think I want us to do in the remaining 12 minutes is just one, is to share your personal experience with paper writing and publication. Then number 2, to reflect on the pieces of information that we have gathered this morning from the video that we have just watched. So I just want to open this up, and maybe I want to put across some few questions, maybe that can guide us as we discuss this. One of them is really, could we draw now a difference between a conceptual paper and an empirical paper? Are they one and the same, or they're different? And if they are, can someone draw that difference and bring it out clearly? Of course, I know Professor touched something on that, and probably I thought we would still go further and make it much clearer to all of us. Is a conceptual paper and empirical paper one and the same? No, they are different. One of the other things that I kept hearing Professor stress out is the issue of theory, theorizing, and theory building as you write your conceptual paper. There is the issue of theory, the issue of theorizing, theory building, and theory. What are these terms? I know a number of us have gone through this many times. It would be very good if you came out and helped the rest of us who are new in this journey to be able to draw distinction between these terms. And finally, in the things that I wanted to communicate before we get into sharing this, is that there is an exercise that in the end of the video, we are given an exercise. And that is to go to the various databases where you always do your search from and download at least 5 conceptual papers and identify the critical parts that Professor was talking about. And that will be at your own time. But right now, let me open this for discussion. 1, share with us your experience so far in your journey of publishing. 2, it would be very good if you made a comment on if there is any difference between an empirical paper and a conceptual paper. And three, if you have anything to say in as far as theorizing, theory building, and theory is concerned. So the ball is with you now. Kindly unmute and share your experience with us. Okay, I see here Peace is saying, thank you, Prof. Some inquiry in a conceptual paper, no indication of results and findings. Incidentally, it appears as though this question is directed to Prof. I don't know if Prof will be available to make a comment on this.
Well,
we seem to have lost you there.
okay. I hope now you are hearing me.
Yes, we can.
Certainly, if you look at the types of papers that we're looking at, this is a conceptual paper. Now, there is an empirical paper. We have also talked about other papers like meta-analytic review papers, systematic literature review papers, state-of-the-art papers, etc. Certainly, what she's pointing out creates or brings out the major distinction between an empirical paper and a conceptual paper. An empirical paper will certainly propose either a hypothesis or a proposition and tests it using data from the field. This one doesn't. Actually, if you do a good job in writing your proposal, the first exercise that you do in your PhD work, that proposal can be turned into a conceptual paper if you want. It can also be turned into some kind of theory building paper if you so wish. So you don't have to bother about results. No. You are dealing with the concepts, and concepts are picked from all over the place. You can pick them from reality for those who are used to story writing, for those who write stories. Right, you can actually pick that story if you so wish, because it is real, and you have picked it somewhere, and you observe a few things taking place. So from that, you can actually publish a theory building paper, and we have attempted to do that, and we've been successful. I don't know what Mr. Lasu wanted me to say, but that is one of the distinguishing feature of conceptual papers, and so it is not there. You propose relationships, you come up with the propositions, and then you discuss those propositions. Maybe that's what I can say at the moment.
Yes, thank you, Prof. And I think this information you've given is sufficient enough to address Peace to Shabe's question on whether there should be results or not. I think this is okay. And just on the same, Prof, another student, I think this is Jeremiah from Kenya, Moi University, he wants to find out why is part 5 called the closing paragraph and not conclusion.
Right. Again, in the social sciences, we don't behave like natural scientists who always tell you that sodium is this and possibly calcium is this, and is always written as Ca. There is an element of flexibility depending on the journal where you are publishing your work. And that's why I think at the beginning I told you that after the abstract, the second section can actually be introduction, depending on the journal, or you can actually call it background, depending on the journal. Some journals may not really like the word background and they like introduction. So there's flexibility in this case. You can have a conclusion if the journal allows it. If it doesn't, then you adopt their structure. And they always give a structure, by the way. Every journal will give you a structure that you must follow. And they will tell you whether they actually accept empirical papers, theoretical papers, conceptual papers, state of the art. That specification is always given. In fact, there are some journals where you cannot even send conceptual papers because they don't accept them, or even theoretical papers, while others they can take on any as long as it is available. I think that's the answer I can give.
Yes, thank you very much, Prof. And I think this, Jeremiah, this answers your concern. We have about 2 minutes or so, and I must say that this is a little bit very technical, and I think that's the reason why most of the students have gone silent on this. But I want to ask us to do that exercise that we have been given, and that will help us as we begin to try to understand what a conceptual paper is and how is it different from these other papers. And I want to appreciate very much the effort from Professor. And he has said that you can actually turn your proposal into a conceptual paper. And for some of us who may be very much interested, get in touch with the Prof and see how we can work out some of the things. You should be able to come up with a paper just from your proposal if you've done a very good job. With just 1 minute to the next session, we have taken quite a long time without hearing from our ladies in the house. Do I have any lady here who can give us closing remarks of this session as we move into the next session? I'm trying to see my chat here. Okay. If I don't see any here, kindly allow me request one of the senior researchers, scholars here, to make 1 or 2 remarks as we close the Students' Congress. Kindly allow me ask Dr. Gideon to close this session with 1 or 2 words. Doctor, if you may, kindly.
Oh, thank you, Erasu, for chairing the session. I would like first of all to apologize that I joined halfway. However, for the remaining time, I picked a lot. And I must appreciate all members who have been able to attend this call. This is a selfless life, and I think God is saying that you really deserve what is beyond your expectation. I must appreciate you as you prepare to join the next session. May God reward you. Thank you, Mr. Russell.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gideon. I hope I'm pronouncing the name well. Sometimes I might end up, mixing these things. Right now, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know if Dr. Koche is around, but I need really to hand this over to the next driver. That's Dr. Okecho, Michael. Dr. Michael, are you in?
Good morning, Joseph.
Good morning, Doctor.
I hope I'm clear, loud and clear. Dr. Michael is not feeling well.
Oh.
I am standing in for him, and I will handle the next session.
Okay, thank you very much. On that note, can I now kindly hand over to you? Thank you very much.
Oh, welcome. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Once again, welcome to the second session of our discussion of our weekly sessions. Allow me to welcome all our students from different corners and also our senior colleagues. Allow me first of all appreciate Mr. Elasu and Professor for managing and taking us through the first session, especially the concept of introducing us to the area of publications as early as possible at our PhDs, even looking at conceptual papers. That is kind of great. Professor, thank you very much for even the recording shared on conceptual papers. That is great. Right. In today's discussion, today's session, we have one of our participants who is going to also present her proposal, Ms. Faith Gavona Kadondi. She's going to be sharing her proposal this morning, and she's with us. As she prepares to share her screen, allow me to recognize and appreciate the senior members on the platform. First of all, allow me first to appreciate Professor Joseph Untai, who is the key person behind this. Professor, we appreciate this learning platform, and I think it adds value, a lot of value to us. Then also Dr. Gideon Nkurunziza, thank you for being part of this. Our own Professor Rola Orobia, thank you very much for your commitment, always being part of the session. We appreciate that, and thank you very much. Our platform, we also appreciate students, community, student community from all corners. First of all, beginning with those from the East African community, those from Moi University, University of Kenyatta, University of Nairobi, among others. Also those from Dar es Salaam University, and other universities from Dar. Thank you for joining. Our colleagues from Zimbabwe, many of them normally attend. Thank you for being part of the platform. Our colleagues from universities from Egypt, we appreciate your commitment and attending this every week. Also those from Asia and the Asian universities, thank you rather I hope you're on today. Thank you for attending. And West African institutions from Nigeria and Ghana, we appreciate. So we have learned a lot on this platform. I think, Professor, we may need to get some time and see how can we document the knowledge that has been shared on this platform, as one time it was proposed by Professor Chikoma. That is kind of a great improvement in what we do. So allow me now give this time to Faith to share her screen so that we can start the discussion. Faith.
try to, where's the slideshow? Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning, Faith.
I hope I'm loud and clear.
Very clear.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity to present my initial work. Yeah, I'll be open to comments which will help me improve and enable me to appear here again. So I will be looking at, my research is focused on network export performance of small and medium scale coffee enterprises in Eastern Uganda. The structure of my presentation is as follows. I will give a brief introduction, then give a background, give the theoretical underpinning of my work, the statement of my problem, the purpose of my study, specific objectives of my study, the hypothesis of this study, the scope of this study, significance of this study, and the methodology that I intend to use. Now, when we talk about SMEs, the definition of small and medium scale enterprises in the context of our economy, that is Uganda, SMEs, micro enterprises, first of all, are defined as those enterprises which employ up to 4 people with annual sales revenues and turnover not exceeding 10 million. Then when we talk about small enterprises, those employ between 5 and 49 people, and their total asset value is between 10 to 100 million. For medium enterprises, they employ 50 to 100 with total assets more than 100 million, but they do not exceed 360 million. That is according to the Uganda Investment Authority. So a combination of all these constitute what are termed as the small, medium enterprises. We are interested in, I am interested in, or this research is interested in looking at SMEs because SMEs play a major role in empowering individuals in societies through the access to delivery of inputs to farmers. You know, I'm looking at coffee farmers. So they play a major role in giving these coffee farmers access to markets, enhancing the bargaining power of small scale producers, imparting skills for better production and marketing services. They help small and medium scale farmers, coffee farmers, along the entire value chain. This research is timely because it fits in with our national development plans. The key focus areas of NDP2 included increasing market access for SMEs, for small and medium scale enterprises products, Uganda's products at both regional and international level, increasing market access at those different levels for farmers and enhancing capacity of farmers. It is important to note that globally, SMEs account for most of the businesses worldwide, and they greatly contribute to job creation and overall economic development, according to World Bank Finance 2022. In Uganda, as I have already mentioned, SMEs are the engine for growth and economic development, innovation, and wealth creation. Now, these SMEs, you'll find them in the different sectors. They're cut across different sectors. Service sector having the largest percentage of these SMEs, that is 49%. We have 33 SMEs engaged in commerce and trade, and then 10% in manufacturing, 8% in other fields. So in view of my current study, this research will be giving special interest to those small and medium scale enterprises that are involved in coffee export trade in Bugisu sub-region, Eastern Uganda. my interest in Bugisu, in the coffee farmers in Bugisu sub-region is, if you look at the Bugisu Cooperative Union, it is one of the few that has survived over the years. It was established in 1954, but you'll see that a number of SMEs and farmers were involved at that time in coffee production and cotton production. But Bugisu Cooperative Union and the farmers who are housed within this union and in the SMEs is a special case study because they have survived the numerous liberalization reforms to date, and they survived state intervention over the years, although they are not without challenges. The structure of the Bugisu Cooperative Union is that you have farmers having their small and medium scale enterprises, then they organize themselves into primary societies, and these primary societies take the products of the farmers to the cooperative union for export. So that is the structure within which it operates. Now, as a response to global competition and limited domestic markets, SMEs resorted to external markets for their products, what was termed as export trade. In the past, these farmers had to sell their goods and services through Asians who are in charge of export trade, Asians and Europeans. Then they formed their primary societies and cooperative associations, and then they were able to export through their cooperatives to international markets. And then when liberalization came in after 1986, it was divided. Farmers could export directly through private players, and then others could still export their coffee and products through cooperative societies and unions. Now, SMEs face significant challenges because they're small. They face significant challenges to their growth, development, and operations, particularly in the area of export performance, as identified by Lajes et al. 2009. Ideally, globalization of economic activity remains volatile, mostly for these small and medium scale enterprises from developing contexts, developing economies. This is because it is usually larger firms that have enough capital that are more efficient and capable of exporting their goods and services. So small farms from developing economies that face, that are exposed to volatility, price fluctuations, limited capital, and getting involved in taking advantage of the entire internationalization process, you'll find that these SMEs are unable to compete and manage on the international business landscape, which is already heterogeneous and more demanding than the local markets, as observed again by Serrano et al. 2016. And these firms are confronted by underfunding given by the limited nature of resources. This limited funding for small and medium scale enterprises, despite the numerous government initiatives that have come into place over the years to support farmers, National Agriculture Advisory Services and other platforms, has continued to affect the aggregate productivity of small and medium scale enterprises. Furthermore, a high level of uncertainty continues to linger on amongst SMEs, and they're unable to service their debts and loans. Theoretically, in this research, I have adopted two theories to anchor network export performance of exporting coffee SMEs. These are the Organization Information Theory, OIT, by Carl, 1976, and the Social Network Theory by Wenlin et al. The Organization Information Theory by Carl Edward postulates that the central role of organizations is to make sense out of vague information. Organizations need to be in charge of information processing and dissemination to their members. Now you'll find that when these farmers are organized in the small and medium scale enterprises, these enterprises are in charge, they're responsible for organizing and disseminating any information in terms of where farmers can sell their goods and services, where they can get raw materials at affordable prices. So dissemination to all their members. The purpose of this is for the members to be able to anticipate proper responses based on the right information that is given to them within these SMEs. It is important to note that once there are any ambiguities or any challenges or lack of information, the information received, processed, wrong actions and results can be anticipated or can occur. Therefore, the lack of necessary information, that is information asymmetry or unevenness in information possessed by small and medium scale enterprises from developing economies, has made them perform poorly in export trade, is one of the contributing factors to their poor performance in export trade. In the context of my current study, due to limited market research, small and medium scale enterprises that are involved in export trade in Uganda are usually without sufficient information to produce, which market segments, where these market segments exist, what standards are required, and in what quantities and prices. Therefore, SMEs engage in export trade with an information imbalance to such an extent that they're usually exploited by foreign firms that deal with them. The occurrence of this has led to poor network export trade. This is the extent to which the theory I intend to use in this research, that is the organization information theory, will domesticate information asymmetry as an explanatory variable of this study. Furthermore, this theory argues for the need of organizations to have sufficient information on what they do in order for them to be efficient and effective. In the context of the current study, SMEs need to have sufficient information regarding their businesses, the markets they're going to export in, so that they're able to engage in businesses more meaningfully with other firms outside of Uganda. Since we are now, it's due to the effect of globalization, so both at the local level, regional level, and international level, it's important for SMEs to be equipped with the accurate information. This is the central argument of internationalization. Indeed, small and medium scale enterprises have to possess quality information if they are to internationalize and perform better in their export trade. However, this theory, the organization information theory alone, independently, does not explain, it fails to explain why, cannot use to be, I'm phrasing it wrongly. This organization information theory on its own cannot explain the other aspects, the other variables in my study, such as financial viability. It does not explain why SMEs continue to be financially unviable, a factor which explains poor performance, one of the factors that I have used to explain the poor performance of export trade, which is brought out by the other theory that I intend to use, which is better argued by the social network export theory. According to this theory, the social network export theory, social relationships within small and medium scale enterprises are comprised of actors such as individual organizations, communities, farmers. Those are the actors within the networks, and the ties within these networks, the ties within these relationships, the ties between these enterprises. Those are the ties between the different actors, the ties between the different farmers, the ties between the different small and medium scale enterprises. The degree of cohesion or embeddedness between or among the different actors determines the relevance of any social network to its actors and stakeholders. The degree of cohesion amongst the actors can subsequently be exploited to the advantages of small and medium scale enterprises. Still under the social network theory, social networks amongst exporting firms, specifically the coffee exporting small and medium scale enterprises. If there are social networks within these firms, within these SMEs, it can significantly increase the participation of small and medium scale enterprises in financial transactions, such as raising the ratio of lending and increasing precautionary savings of members within the various networks. When we're also talking about increasing financial transactions and improving financial viability, it can be both informally and formally. We will find that one of the challenges that some of these coffee exporting firms faced over the years was this aspect of financial viability when liberalization came into place and the government reduced funding to some of these, the cooperatives and the small and medium scale enterprises. The farmers under Bugisi Cooperative Union within their SMEs were able to survive because they were able to provide their coffee to the cooperative on credit and then be paid later. They didn't have to be stuck with the bulk of their goods and services. It was the beauty of the networks that they had established within their SMEs that enabled these informal financial transactions to ensure that they continue to operate. And strong and social networks of exporting firms can enhance financial viability by elevating or promoting firms' access, which act as security. However, due to poor social networks, access to formal credit has become increasingly difficult for rural and low-income households as well as world. In the European Union, looking at it from a global perspective, in the European Union in 2017, more than 700,000 European Union enterprises sold goods outside of the European Union. Out of these enterprises, around 615,000 were small and medium scale sized. These SMEs exported goods worth 476 billion, which represented 28% of the total value of extra EU exports in that year. Furthermore, in many economic sectors, European Union SMEs account for more than 50% of the total value of EU exports, according to Lucian et al. However, despite of the fact that Bugisu Coffee Farmers Union, which houses coffee SMEs, was formed in 1954, which remains one of Uganda's few farmer-owned entities that have survived since the closure of the Uganda Cooperative Bank of 1999 and since the closure of a number of SMEs and farms over the years dealing in coffee and export trade. The BCU has increasingly become indebted and they cannot effectively provide services to members. They are generally mismanaged and most importantly, they are unable to compete in a liberalized market to date, according to Wambede 2021. As a result, small farms can no longer cross the border so as to deal in export trade competently. They're unable to pay initial costs of the internationalization process and they cannot equally or evenly compete with their counterparts. Theoretically, no single theory on its own, even as presented, can explain network export performance. The organization information theory argues that network export performance could be a result of managed information asymmetry and internationalization. However, the social network theory considers network export performance as a consequence of financial viability of small and medium-scale enterprises. Therefore, the integration of the various thrusts of these theories is the proposal of my research if SMEs are to have enhanced network export performance. This application and combination of these two theories is yet to be explored. My conceptual framework, which is showing the relationship between information asymmetry, internationalization, financial viability, and network export performance. The purpose and specific objectives of my research are to examine the relationship between information asymmetry, internationalization, financial viability, and network export performance of coffee exporting SMEs. Let me go back before I continue back to my conceptual framework. Hypothesis 1 explains the relationship between information asymmetry and network export performance. To what extent does information asymmetry influence network export performance? Hypothesis 2 will look at the relationship between information asymmetry, financial viability as a mediating factor to network export performance. We have hypothesis 3 looking at financial viability influencing and its relationship to overall network export performance. Hypothesis 4, we're looking at internationalization and its relationship to financial viability. Hypothesis 5, we're looking at network export internationalization and its relationship to overall network export performance of small and medium scale coffee exporting firms. And hypothesis 6 and 7, hypothesis 6 is going to look at financial viability as a mediating factor of information asymmetry and overall network performance. And then hypothesis 7, financial viability as a mediating factor of internationalization and network export performance. In a nutshell. So the purpose and specific objectives of my research include to examine the relationship between information asymmetry and internationalization, financial viability, and network export performance of coffee SMEs in Eastern Uganda. Specific objectives. This research intends to establish the extent to which information asymmetry influences network export performance of coffee exporting SMEs, to examine the relationship between information asymmetry and financial viability of coffee exporting SMEs in Uganda, to establish the relationship between financial viability and network export performance of coffee exporting SMEs in Uganda, to examine the relationship between internationalization and financial viability of coffee exporting SMEs in Uganda, to establish the relationship between internationalization and network export performance of coffee exporting SMEs in Uganda, to establish the extent to which financial viability mediates the relationship between information asymmetry and network export performance of small and medium scale coffee exporting SMEs, and to establish the extent to which financial viability mediates in the relationship between internationalization and network export performance of SMEs. Hypothesis 1, as explained earlier, it indicates that information asymmetry is significantly related to network export performance. Hypothesis 2 indicates that information asymmetry and financial viability are significantly and positively correlated. Hypothesis 3 indicates that financial viability is significantly and positively related to network export performance. Hypothesis 4 indicates that there's a significant relationship between internationalization and financial viability. Hypothesis 5 indicates internationalization is significantly correlated with network export performance. Hypothesis 6 indicates that financial viability mediates in the relationship between information asymmetry and network export performance. Hypothesis 7 indicates financial viability as a mediator in the relationship between internationalization and network export performance. My research question is, what is the role of information asymmetry, internationalization in fostering network export performance as facilitated by financial viability? The methodology I intend to use in my research is critical realism, which is a branch of philosophy that distinguishes between the real world and the observable world. This is best suited for my research because it caters for both the scientific forms of positivism and interpretivist explanations. The use of critical realism in this research will give use to both deductive and inductive forms of research. The research designs I intend to utilize and their tools are quantitative and qualitative. The quantitative designs, under quantitative design, my study population is 270 SMEs, coffee exporting SMEs that are housed under Bugisu Cooperative Union. My unit of inquiry is the SMEs that are engaged, SMEs as a network in export trade, housed under Bugisu Cooperative Union. My unit of analysis will be SMEs dealing in coffee exports. I intend to use proportionate stratified random sampling. My sample size is 159 according to Craigie and Morgan, based on Craigie and Morgan 1970 table of sample size, this determination. Operationalization and measurement of my study variables. The study variables information asymmetry and financial viability. Information asymmetry is unidimensional. So it's unidimensional, so many indicators were found. I did not get any multidimensional scale for information asymmetry. For financial viability, Ramesh and Jai scale will be adopted. This is an error. It should be for internationalization. The legislative scale will be adopted. Then for qualitative design, my sample size will be 10 respondents. And then for quality control, I hope to ensure reliability and validity of my data through trustworthiness and consistency of my sources. And the sampling technique under qualitative would be passive sampling. Thank you very much. This is my work so far. Yeah, thank you. And how I intend to carry out my study. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Faith, for your presentation. I think members have picked something from your work. We now go back to the other colleagues to really give you comments on how you can improve your work and see possibly if you can be able to submit your proposal soon. Colleagues, that is Faith's work. Let us give her advice and see how she can improve. We I think we can go to the students community, and I mean, we can mix them up, but possibly let's begin with the comments from our students. Members, can you give comments to Faith and see how she can improve her work? Yes. Put the comment in the chat, or you can put up your hand and give the comments to Faith. As we do that, allow me appreciate and recognize all those on the platform, as I did in the beginning. Thank you very much for joining and being with us this morning. Yes, comments to Faith. Faith, thank you very much. Let us wait for the comments and then you can see how you can improve. Charles's hand is up. Is Charles to report?
Thank you very much, Doctor, and thank you so much, Faith. Just wanted to make one or two comments. One, like from your opening work, I seem to have seen the word micro, small, and medium enterprises, if I saw well, but along the way, the M disappeared. Then we concentrated on SME, and then in some instances, I see you're referring to small farms. Do they mean the same thing? Just clarification that, as if from the opening statement as something like micro, small, and in your definitions when you're defining them, as if I saw micro being defined, but which disappeared along the way, and also using the word small farms in some instances. Then also, of course, from the discussion, especially in the introduction, there was noted a lot of discussion on the context, which is Bugisu, and then other variables. Somehow there was less emphasis on other constructs within your study. And then also on the statement of the problem, I noted some very strong claims about Bugisu, something called, you talked about mismanagement, statements like mismanaged, indebted, cannot effectively provide services to its members. On the statement of the problem, very strong claims. Maybe we could need to be substantiated, especially evidence of that. Yeah, I think let me stop there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Charles. Faith, can I assume that you're writing down these questions? Faith?
Yes, I'm taking note, Doctor.
Okay, we can take another maybe 2, 3, and then we can call you back to respond. Betty Namalwa, your hand is up. I also request Petrino Thieno to voice your question. Yes, Betty. Betty.
Yes. Hello. Good morning.
Morning, Betty.
I thank Faith for the good presentation. Mine is on the conceptual framework, which is showing the relationship between the dependent and independent variable. On the conceptual framework, I see it has, okay, the independent variables are many, and so it is not coming out very well. It is somehow confusing because it is hard to tell which one is even the dependent variable. So I don't know, even the indicators of these variables, I think are not yet brought out very well, the indicators. So the conceptual framework is somehow confusing. That's what I can say. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Betty. Can I go to Petrona Othieno. Othieno, please, can you voice your concern?
Thank you so much, Chair. Personally, I was looking at the objectives and I found them so many. And as I had put it in the chat, I always find the hypothesis element so confusing. That is my concern. Otherwise, Faith, thank you so much for the presentation. I do appreciate because I learn a lot. Personally, I am on the data collection stage. Thank you so much.
Welcome. And then for the list, first set of questions, lastly, Joseph Esuku. Esuku, you had a concern. Can you please also raise it?
Thank you, Faith, for our presentation. My area of concern specifically was on the conceptual framework. When she talked about the hypotheses, there were quite a number originating from her objectives. However, when it came to the representation on the framework, I could not precisely see hypotheses 6 and 7, though she tried to explain, but the arrows were not indicating that relationship in the conceptual framework. That is what I wanted to pick and point out for now. Thank you.
Okay, fine. Faith, can you respond to some of those? I think some of those just for clarification.
Thank you, Doctor, and thank you, members, for the feedback to help me keep improving. I'll try to address a few. An issue was raised on me defining both micro and small enterprises. The focus of my research is on small and medium scale enterprises of coffee exporting farmers. And then for the strong claims, I need to refine that language and substantiate it, that one that was raised. Then for the conceptual framework, my dependent variable is the network export performance, being dependent on internationalization and information asymmetry with financial viability as a mediating factor. The scales that are within.
Faith, I think as you respond to those questions of framework, you can again flash it for clarity.
So my dependent variable is the network export performance, and the independent variables, my IVs, are information asymmetry and internationalization with financial viability as a mediating factor. The variables within were obtained from measurable scales. The profits, global competitiveness, global market share, and the volume of assets of the farm as indicators of overall network export performance, even for financial viability, capital adequacy, asset quality, and liquidity management were obtained from existing measurable scales, even internationalization. Information asymmetry does not have, I did not find any. That's why I left it under with indicators, and I said it is unidimensional, but I beg to be guided further, by other colleagues and taking other comments to see how to improve my work. Thank you.
Ahmed.
Yes, Prof.
Thank you, Ahmed. Allow me just to give more comments on the conceptual framework. I had jotted down a number of things. I don't know whether I can also go ahead and share them at this point. I was waiting to come in at the end, but since the conceptual framework is up on the screen, I thought I should come in at this point. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Prof.
Okay. Faith. The conceptual framework, when we look at, while you are saying that you used measures that are existing, I'm still finding a challenge with your work. Some of the things are heavy. Information asymmetry, I agree with you, it's unidimensional. We'll leave that. We go to your DV. Network export performance. Network export performance. If you have, if other studies, first of all, you have to understand what network export performance is. Have an operational definition that you're working with in your study, the operational definition, okay? Then based on that, you look at now the indicators. The indicators should be, yes, like you said, picked from previous studies that have been tested and used over time. Internationalization. I kept asking myself, what is internationalization? The conceptual definition of internationalization. When I look at what you have put there as indicators, to me, they seem to be predictors of internationalization. Unless I'm wrong, really. Think about it, because entrepreneurial orientation, is it an indicator of internationalization? I remember that entrepreneurial orientation has five big indicators within that. And they're heavy. When you look at those indicators, the dimensions of EO, they have their own sets of questions and all that. When you read through the questionnaire items, to me, they don't reflect internationalization. Internationalization intent predicts internationalization, and therefore is not an indicator. Domestic learning effort predicts. So the question again is, what is internationalization in your study? What is? So go back and think about that. Good enough, you have a number of people who have done research in this area, starting with Professor Ngoma. Look at his work. Financial viability, capital adequacy, asset quality, liquidity management. What is financial viability? What is financial viability? So in a nutshell, on the conceptual framework, yes, you have a nice flower there, but you need to read more. You need to read more. What is said about those concepts? How has it been measured over time? And what do you think will be relevant in your study? as you're at it, also get questionnaire items. And remember, you have, like I always say, you have the parents there. Network export is the parent. What you have below that are the children. Financial viability is the parent. What you have below are the children. The children must have the same DNA with the parents. Otherwise, then, you know, what you put there as the indicators, dimensions, or construct, whatever you choose to call them, must be a reflection of the main concept, okay? Then one of the comments I'd noted, Alupot has mentioned it, but I just want to also, just for emphasis. When you look at the conceptual framework, I see H1, H2, H3. When it came to the presentation, you were saying something different. They were not, you know, aligned to how you've numbered those arrows. That's number one. And then in the next slide where you have the objectives, and then also another slide on the hypothesis, it was still not aligned with what you have there, okay? Still not aligned with what you have there. So I quickly put here, did you really read through your presentation before coming out to present? Because you would have seen those mistakes. I think it was a mistake. You must have tried to correct along the way, but you forgot to reflect that. So go back and reflect. Align what you have written there with what is in your conceptual framework, how you've labeled. Okay, then from a participant, someone said there are too many objectives, there are too many hypotheses. Like I've said, and I'll continue to say, the number of hypotheses or objectives comes from the way you have, you know, conceptualized your work. Go back to the conceptual framework. In your conceptual framework, when you have all those arrows represent either I have hypothesis or conceptual hypothesis or research objective. So you cannot have an arrow without testing it. That's where the thing comes from. That's where the number of hypotheses come from. But if the work is well conceptualized, yes, you can test all those hypotheses, and it's possible to have a generalized position at the end of the day. So for me, I wouldn't pay so much attention at this point on how many hypotheses should one have, how many objectives should one have. It depends on that flower there that you're calling the conceptual framework. Every arrow you put in that flower there has to be tested. Otherwise, the arrow becomes redundant, okay? Faith, another thing I noted, the footer, it appears you were editing or you're working on someone's slides. I noted the footers vary. Somewhere you have, now like here you have first PhD proposal presentation. Then some other slides have discussion of results. Be very, very careful as you do these things. Be very, very careful. Okay, then there's the issue of SMEs. Someone already mentioned this. You have SMEs, first take me to your first slide. You have SMEs, then somewhere you are using small farms, Then you come back to SMEs, then small farms, inconsistencies. Are you studying SMEs or you are studying small farms? And then you have the topic. Is it the title? Not the topic. The title of your work. That is background continued. Okay. Small and medium scale coffee enterprises. Are you studying both small and medium scale coffee enterprises? Or are you studying small scale coffee enterprises? This one you need to be clear right from the onset. You know, yes, you gave the definitions, varying definitions. But the question is, which definition are you adopting in your study? That's number one. Studies have shown that most of the enterprises in Uganda, when you look at that definition, the definitions you gave, 90% of the enterprises fit in the definition of small enterprises, 90%. But at the end of the day, we keep saying SMEs, 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 but most of the enterprises fit in the small enterprises. Actually, like someone says, micro. Most of the businesses are micro and small, employing between 2 and maximum of 49. This is something that you need to go and think about. And then there are dynamics that differentiate between the two categories. Lumping them together sometimes is problematic, but my senior will say more about that. My concern here was, are you studying both small and medium enterprises? If yes, it also has an implication on the population and the sample. Think about it. Look, you are looking at enterprises in Eastern Uganda. When you just scan the environment, how many are medium? How many are small? How many are micro? Maybe you could first start by getting the population for you to be able to see where you can lay emphasis or focus, okay? Yeah. Statement of the problem. You're looking at network export performance. The question I ask myself is, what is network export performance? What is it? What is it? Based on that operational definition that you will have, I expect to see problem issues in line with that. Problem issues. If you look at your conceptual framework, you had something like profits, global competitiveness, volume of sales, etc., etc. But I do not see those things in your statement of the problem. When you have the dependent variable and its indicators, we expect to see now, you are good enough, you're using statement of the problem perspective or orientation. align your problem statement with that concept there. What is wrong out there in terms of network export performance? What is wrong out there? As you at it, all the indicators, dimensions of or whatever you choose to call them, must be accounted for in what you are calling a problem. What is wrong out there? Reflect it in terms of the profits, global competitive, give us a picture. And when you talk about performance, performance is over time. So we expect to see what has been going wrong out there over a period of time. Over a period of time. Performance. I don't know whether just 1 year performance is sufficient to say that there's an issue out there, but you need to show the magnitude of an issue there that needs to be addressed. That needs to be addressed. So for me, in a nutshell, on your conceptual, on your statement of the problem, I think still needs to be strengthened. You cite only one Bugisu Coffee Farmers Union, and you're saying you're looking at coffee enterprises in Eastern Uganda. You need to give a picture of what is wrong out there in terms of the coffee enterprises in Eastern Uganda. Bugisu is, I don't know. Anyway, this is, you've got my point, at least. You've got my point. Go back to the conceptual framework, please. Somewhere you said you're looking at three theories. When you go back to reading again, try to see how the theories that you select must be able to explain the relationships that you're portraying in that nice flower there. A theory that explains the relationship between information asymmetry and network export performance. We expect to see that theory. A theory that explains the relationship between internationalization and network export performance. A theory that explains financial viability and network export performance. Think about that. Methodology. Run to the slide on methodology. Oh, the population is the enterprises under the cooperative. Okay. Okay. Okay, I'll stop there for now. Over to you, and Faith.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Doctor. I think, Faith, you have seen the quality of comments you are getting. We need really to appreciate this. This is kind of good. Professor, thank you for being detailed and giving the students actually ample time. That is kind of good. We really appreciate that. We have we have a kind from Dr. Gideon.
You see the
Yes.
footer there. The footer there is reading discussion of results.
I have seen, Prof. Thank you. Extremely detailed. Those are issues, Prof, we normally go through. Faith, you are taking note. I really love the quality of comments and how people are detailed. Dr. Gideon, yes.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Faith, for the good presentation. Although as you have heard, this part of learning, I must appreciate Professor Raula. I had noted a number of them, and she has elaborated more what I had indicated. Although I must appreciate you, Faith, that the first time I saw your presentation and today, I must really thank you that when you handle some of these aspects, I'm sure you are there. I also have some few others just to make you look through them. On your DV, which is actually it is network export performance. These are probable questions that you are likely to meet. I know a number of previous studies have focused on export performance, and yours is network export performance. Now, you must bring out a clear distinction, especially on the measures, so that you don't risk taking off that network export performance. In line of what Professor raised, as you look at SMEs, do all of them export? And what kind of networks are you looking at in those SMEs? Which ones are networking as they're exporting? I'm talking from layman's kind of, not necessarily from the position you are taking. But I think this raised again another aspect. In my mind, if it is a network export performance, are you going to do a dyadic kind of study? Could it be having a dyad somewhere, so that the aspect of network comes in, network export performance? I think for me, as you progress, keep on asking yourself whether you are not measuring export performance. See whether you're measuring network export performance. These measures must be defined. In the same vein, when you look at profits and volume of sales, I know Boomer's theory tends to bring out these two separately, but in my view, one is a function of the other. I think you may look at that also. Now, when it came to problem statement, I saw something like value of export. And indeed, when I saw value of export in your problem statement, I started seeing some bit of network. I don't know why, like here you are saying, there was total value of extra UE exports. In my mind, I thought maybe the value of exports. In network export, I think, I don't see why the value of extra exports maybe don't become one of the measures. I don't know. For me, the network export, the value is very important. Value added, something like that. I think we may need to really rethink on the measures clearly, so that you are not misunderstood. I have really overemphasized on that. Reason being, it seems to sound as one of the issues, key issues, and that is the animal you're handling. Please don't take it light. Uh, the other one is just some minor aspects like the citation, especially when you say there's a significant challenge to growth development and export performance, and you're citing a scholar of 2009. I think you may need to get another scholar who is current. One may wonder whether this issue is still there. So the current, look at those citations, especially when you are trying to create a stronger debate in your study. The current literature citation is important. The other one I seem also to re-emphasize, which I denoted. I know you have brought out the practical problem and a number of theories that, trying to bring out a theoretical gap of why the problem exists. That is one perspective. According to Wetem, yes, you can try to say, yes, having a problem, you want to come up with a good theory that explains that problem. But don't forget the other school of thought, that some people would want to hear, yes, are you studying this for the first time? What have others done, and what do you think you can add? So as you look at this in a problem statement, why has this problem continued to exist? Is it only because we don't have a clear theory, or there could be also some people have tended to test a number of aspects, especially some of these predictors in explaining the other one? And that also raises another aspect, that yes, you have a mediation. Where did it come from? Is it theoretically driven, or perhaps the other school of thought could have been the justification of why the mediation comes in? I think you may look at that also to strengthen, to capture the views from different scholars. The other one, I think I learned it. I keep learning about this. I think when you are critiquing a theory, the language you use when you say it fails, yes, it has to fail. Was the theory meant for your work? I think that is something Professor last time talked about it. Try to see the language you can use. Don't blame the theory so much if it was not meant for your work. I think that's something I keep learning. You may also see how to write so that you don't blame the theorist. The other one, I saw you also, you seem to critique the Rust theory. I kept on wondering, if you're critiquing that other theory, then what other theory are you proposing? If you're using my theoretical framework, do you know the implication of that? Faith, you may also need to remember that. It may call for another theory again. I think look at that as well. When it comes to methodology, you can go there. I think I saw something there. Yeah, I like the way you brought the philosophical orientation and justification. However, when you attempt to say you're going to use both quantitative and qualitative, and you stop there, you are giving room for more questions. Just tell us how you intend to combine the two, and giving clear justification. Don't forget where you're coming from, the study objectives, maybe how do you align your hypothesis and and the preposition or the objectives in line of this. Why do you propose this? And also in line of the problem you are looking at. Does it mean if you don't use one, you can't explore export? Network export performance. So you need to justify that. I did not see that one come out, and it states more questions to come. The other one again, the choice of your population. Please don't forget, all these exporting small enterprises. They're also exporting medium enterprises. I think look at what is that is exporting, so that you can have you can generalize your results, since that is the direction you are taking. And also, when you say you are going to use proportion sampling, proportion stratified random sampling, I think give us a proportionate kind of sample, and you say something on how you are going to do that. I think the question of how is still coming out. At your level, one must know why and how you are going to do it. And also, you did not bring out aspects of how you intend to do some bit of analysis to answer the earlier objectives. Please look at that. It's very, very important. Otherwise, Faith, I must thank you. Please put the courage, and I'm sure you're there. I wish you well. Thank you. I submit chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Gideon, for another round of comments. Faith, I think you are picking these comments. I don't know how many pages you have written so far, but I know you are still writing. Can I request David Shimoimo to come up and raise your comment on NDPs, possibly, and provide more guidance on that to Faith. David? David Shimoimo?
You hear me now?
Yes. Yes, we can hear you now.
What was the question again? I'm sorry.
No, David, you raised something on NDPs. NDPs,
Yes.
Can you please clarify?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to thank the presenter for this daring presentation. Some of us, you are yet to hear from us. We are still getting the courage, but we shall come soon. But in my comment, NDP, we was talking about NDP 2, which actually expired, I think, 3 years ago. And right now, what we are using for implementing government programs is NDP 3. And definitely it has more up-to-date information in all those aspects, which she's researching on. So I would encourage her to pick interest and quote that one instead of the other one which expired. The other comment I made was on these micros. Micros, it's a terminology which I'm saying we more or less use theoretically. They are not well defined. They are quite informal. Even the lady who makes katogo along the road is in that classification. I find that it is quite too wild for you to include it in your research. Maybe it might be safer to define the scope of your research from small, because those ones are assumed to have some bit of informality and some records, which actually can aid in your research when you are doing your research. So to me, those are my two key issues, and I'm happy that Professor Orobia also said something about the issue of how you define your SMEs. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David, for that. Professor's hand is up, but okay, I'm going to invite him. But let me sorry for that. Let me first of all probably George Changa, you had something to say. Can you voice it briefly before we invite Professor? Yes, George.
Thank you, Chair. Just to address the comment in the chat room, but Dr. Gideon raised a similar concern where the presenter mentioned that is going to use both quantitative and
okay, Changa, your network seems not be good. Are you you are breaking?
both quantitative and qualitative method, but she didn't, or she doesn't tell me my concern, and it was raised by doctor. Thank you.
Welcome. Before I invite Professor Ntai, Professor Rola, you raised something on which has piqued interest in it, and actually it was among my comments on the issue of should everybody use mediation? Why everybody comes back with mediation? I'm going to call you to have more light, but members, one of the reasons that we have emphasized and we use different methodologies over here, this faith not to you, we're not telling to change, no, but a general comment for those who are starting that try to look around for other methodologies of doing a PhD. We were here and we saw Professor Chikoma sharing with us that his PhD is case-based, used only case studies to do his PhD. We have seen a number of professors now we have in different universities who have actually done qualitative PhDs only, and many of them. Now, so far, we are going to panel data. Some people are going to panel data, which is very, very, very good. And then we have many people are coming on board to use mixed methods. So many have used mixed methods. But mediation has taken really a great part, and little have been done on moderations and among others. This is, I think, a professor is trying to say that should everybody do what others are doing, or from the presentation we have here, can somebody pick up and say, okay, can we do this? Like this morning, the video you watched on really presenting conceptual papers, can you pick up interest and then have a conceptual paper from your proposal, then waiting at the end and again really also have an empirical paper from your results? These are issues that we should actually be learning from our these early morning classes. I don't know whether Professor Roy want to add on something small before I invite Professor Antai to have his comments.
Thank you, Ahmed. Not really, not at this point. Let us hear from the senior.
Yes, Prof.
Thank you very much, Ahmed, and thanks very much, Faith, for your presentation. I certainly agree with the comments that have been raised by everyone that has attempted to make a contribution to Faith's work. Faith, I have a few, and some will, some of the comments will be somehow a bit related to what others said, but you'll bear with me. I will not really repeat, but just bring another perspective. Faith, your topic is network export performance of SMEs in Eastern Uganda. When I looked at this topic and I listened to your presentation, two things seem to feature prominently, and one of them is the issue of coffee, which is actually, I think, is where you are testing your concept, because you can export anything, other things, not necessarily coffee. Then to the issue of Bugisu, I can't, because that was Bugisu Cooperative Society. And at the same time, I see in the topic you are talking about SMEs, but the emphasis in your statement of the problem and background is Bugisu. It wasn't very clear to me as to whether you were actually studying a case. Bugisu, you using Bugisu as a case because there are so many other cooperative societies, but you took Bugisu. But at the same time, you're talking about SMEs. These are SMEs under Bugisu. I just didn't understand. This could be farmers, individual farmers. I'm not very sure whether you are not talking about households, but you are talking about actually SMEs. I'm not very sure about that. And for me, the distinction between Bugisu, SMEs, and the relationships between them is a little bit blurred. So I couldn't pick that very well. Two, you talk about network export performance. The background seems to center majorly on problems of SMEs. I think you call them problems of SMEs. And as you were presenting, I started asking myself how these problems actually inform your conceptualization. I think you spent a major portion of your time talking about the problems, and at the end of the day, you said that all of these somehow make these farms a little bit hard to do their work. Right. So the challenges coming now. From the challenges, you went straight to theories, and I heard you talk about the organization information theory, and I think the second one was the social network theories or theory. But at some stage you said the organization information theory fails to explain why SMEs are unviable, and you said, well, that is explained by the social network theory. And I had difficulties with that statement. I just didn't understand what you are talking about. Now, having said that, let me go back to your concept By the way, from the statements I've made, I'm just saying that I didn't see how those theories inform your study. I mean, in simple terms. But let me go back to the concept of network export performance. To me, the concept is good. And of course, it creates some kind of point of departure from what the traditional scholars have been looking at. Majorly, most of them look at export performance. Now, one of the things that most scholars fail to bring out is the fact that there is always interdependence between varying participants in exporting networks. And these are issues that need to be, well, brought out. They need to be brought out. You need to bring them out properly in the background. And that is the interdependence between varying participants in exporting networks. And this is what has resulted into what we call globalization, processes of globalization. And of course, which invites scholars to review the way they have looked at export performance, because export performance has traditionally been looked at in terms of internally oriented perspectives. And that's why you'll have those issues of sales and so forth coming up. Right, and the point I'm making here, I think it will be very good if you can actually flash your conceptual framework at this stage, because I'm actually coming to your conceptual framework. So that is what traditional scholars have looked at, the internally oriented processes. I can't see your conceptual framework. I don't know whether it is my internet here that is failing me. So the assumption here is that because of the limitations of the previous studies, right, by scholars in export business, so the concept of network performance, export performance, comes up because you have varying participants in exporting networks. And again, this is where you must think about your Bugisu and the other SMEs, whether they are actually participating in exporting networks. So the assumption here is that the original thinking is inadequate because they use single item measures. So in order to overcome that concern, that challenge, that problem, right, you come up with a concept of network export performance, right? And this network export performance brings out the element of the network theory. In fact, right from the word go, by the time you come up with that topic of network export performance, you have already started using network, the social network theory. So because of the inadequacy that I've just pointed out, then you come up with a topic that is based on the network theory. And of course, in this case, you are looking at a diversity of network-oriented indicators, and of course, the different types of respondents that you'll have. So in other words, you are talking about at the end of the day, if you're going to select your sample or your population, you'll be looking at a multi-industry sample, not just one aspect, but you'll be looking at all those fellows who participate. They are actually in a network. So in other words, you move into that aspect, and then you must now go into your conceptualization. Now your conceptualization, if you had bothered to read literature and do a systematic literature review, you would have discovered that this network export performance has 5 components. Majorly, most of the scholars actually agree that these are the things that constitute network export performance. For example, the first component will be in terms of the overall export venture performance. Then the second component will take you into the relationships, right, that exist between those fellows who participate in a network, right? So in other words, your second construct should be relationship performance with the importer versus now the competitors. So if you are going to export on the international market, then you must look at the other competing firms on the international market as well. Then the third component will require you to look at relationship performance with the supplier. Now, if you're looking at farmers, I'm not very sure. You of course, that's where your conceptualization now will be domesticated. But at the international market, you'll be looking at those suppliers at that level. Then you may have to look at the product quality performance of the supplier. And then, of course, the importer's satisfaction with the quality of the supplied product. So you have 5 major components that constitute that variable that you call network export performance. And I'll tell you, Faith, you don't have to worry very much about the measures. The measures actually do exist and they have been published. And in case you don't have them, just inbox me. I'll send you journal articles with the tool that has operationalized and measured the concept of network export performance. Now, the ones you have there are problematic. And one of the things that you may have to think about here is whether you have sufficient data at the export market, or you are going to pick this information from farms. But which farms now, at what level? Domestic, international? So you need to really think very hard. But the variable is about export performance. Right, and if they are, all of them take their coffee to Bugisu, and Bugisu takes it to the international market, the situation has changed totally, and you must revisit this concept and even the farms that are participating, because I don't think these SMEs are actually competing with the Bugisu cooperative, unless that's a position. I really don't know. You are the expert in this case. I'm very ignorant about what you are. But as far as the concept is concerned and the conceptualization, that is the position. Now, still looking at the conceptualization, if you look at internationalization, again, literature on internationalization will tell you that there are 2 major perspectives, the inward and the outward. Right. And the outward is actually exporting, and you are talking about the percentage of your sales at the international market, right? And of course your presence in the foreign market, international market. So these ones are not correct. The 3 of them should be removed, right? Remove the 3 constructs and look at either what we call the inward. If you were in the area of tourism, for example, where you bring in the visitors and so forth, you'll be dealing with the inward. Even education, where you attract students to come and study in the country here instead of going out, so that becomes inward. Now, outward is when you actually go out, and we have a measure for that. So these ones are incorrect, right? Now, again, if you have network export performance and you have internationalization this way, you would have created a coloniality problem, meaning that you must revisit this construct of internationalization and think about something else. Again, if you review literature, you'll see how far research on network export performance has advanced and what remains to be done, so that you bring in other constructs. So that is all that I wanted to say. Now, all this thing has implications for your methodology and the other sections of your proposal, but I must thank you very much for your presentation, and I want to encourage others who don't want to present, who have taken long attending. You listen. Some people have been listening for the last 2 years. I want to encourage you, like my friend Chimoimo, I want to encourage you to come up and present. You've listened for a very long time. My friend Wasike, I hope next week you will be presenting. But I think those are my comments, and they are meant to improve your work, Faith. But I must thank you. Over to you, Ahmed.
Prof, thank you very much for another round of detailed comments for Faith. Faith, I think you are very lucky. Once I was a PhD student, and I've learned getting such comments at this level is you need to thank God for it. I mean, such comments sometimes come back. You get them as you are defending, and then you end up collapsing. So we thank God for this opportunity of the platform, that people can get such very beautiful, detailed, sincere comments. You collapse today, but I mean, you wake up and then you are better off. I think we shall get this recording and share it with you, because so many things you need to address. You may not be able to remember them very, very well. So we need to really get a few remaining comments from the members. Dr. Bashir, you have not said anything. I invite you to say something. Dr. Hassan Bashir, please come up and support Faith. And then we can pick a few comments. I don't know whether before I invite Dr. Hassan Bashir, Faith, do you have any reaction so far?
Thank you, Doctor. I've taken in all of the comments. I need to go back and reflect on all of them and see how to improve my work. But I'm very, very grateful for the senior colleagues and my colleagues who have taken time to guide me and point me in the right direction on how to improve this work so that I can come back soon and again present a refined version. And thank you for encouraging me to come and present. Yeah.
Oh, welcome. Yes, Dr. Hassan, are you online?
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Ahmed Walgembe, and thank you, Faith, for the presentation. Sorry, I joined a bit late, but I'll talk about one aspect. As senior colleagues were making comments, I kept wondering what the unit of analysis is for Faith. It would be very nice if the unit of analysis was networks, but I don't know how possible that is to operationalize and measure. Maybe the seniors in the area will guide her. When Professor Entai was presenting, he seemed to imply that, but practically, I don't know how possible that is, but maybe this is food for thought for Faith. Otherwise, thanks so much.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Hassan, for that. Faith, I would like to request you to really take seriously comments on your dependent variable. I think Professor Antai raised it, and also Dr. Gideon, the issue of network performance versus network export performance versus export performance. Please be very, very clear. Professor has proposed to send you articles to review to get the new measures. Please call him today or any day so that you can get that information. That is very, very key. If you take it for granted, you will collapse in the presentation room. And we don't want to see that if you have been participating here all the time. Please take note of that. That is very, very serious. One possibly last comment from one or two from the members, then we shall go into anyone comment from the students community before we close with the closing remarks. Okay, I will invite again. I don't know, Professor Laura has left. Okay.
Dr. Walugembe?
Yes.
Just to say something, David Chimoimo had said something about NDP2 being having expired, but I would I want to clarify and say NDP3 builds, the new national development policies build on the old ones. NDP2 builds on NDP1, NDP3 builds on the other national development policies that have been used. So yes, I do appreciate his comment, and I will also look into what is in NDP3, but it's his statement of the literature or the data or what was used in National Development Plan 2 having expired is I think not correct. Yeah, thank you.
You have the same comment from Bwire Edwin, so you need to really take note of that. I think if there's a new version of NDP 3, it will be fair for you. You need to justify why you are quoting an old version. There is a new version. If NDP was revised to 3, you must create justification why you are quoting 2, not 3. Because even Bwire Edwin raised the same comment in the chat. And I think, anyway, you have a number of issues on your table. But thank you for the confidence and also the readiness to prepare whatever you have to come and bring it on the table here. Thank you. Alice, are you still online? Alice, I would like you to come and give one comment as we, then I will invite Dr. Gideon to give us a closing remarks and a prayer. Alice Harineti. Alice. Okay, I think Alice is not responding. Dr. Gideon, please come and give us the closing words and the closing prayer.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Ahmad. Thank you, our chief mentor, Professor Tai, and the other mentors in your respective capacity. Dear colleagues, you're also mentors. I'm aware. Whether you're a student, you should be mentoring your colleagues as well. So I appreciate you. Appreciate all members from different parts of the world. Please continue enjoying this journey of learning, because learning is the way to go if we are to change this world. Faith, thank you, and we keep encouraging you. Please, you can conduct each of us individually where you seem to have a challenge. I'm sure you are going to make a big difference. And I call upon other members as well to join the same track. You come and we learn from each other. It's important. I'm wishing you a very good Sunday, depending on where you come from, and I think it is a day that for those with the same faith, you should be able to go and thank the Lord, and then we meet next week. Please enjoy your day. Stay blessed.
Yes, Dr. Gideon, as you
From
give
where
us
you
the
are,
prayer,
can
Dr.
we have a
Dr.
closing
Gideon,
prayer?
Dr. Gideon,
Yes, please.
as you give us the prayer, you can have a moment of silence for one of our members, the student Barbara, whom we buried within the course of the week. Barbara was a student of energy economics, and I think she once participated on this platform. So pray for her soul to rest in peace. But again, those who work with mobs, we also lost a staff. So you can add in a moment of silence in your closing prayer for the deceased. Thank you.
Can we have a moment of silence, please, from where you are? May the soul of the departed rest in peace. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this morning, and we continue praying to give us that strength to wake up early, and we continue learning. Father, this morning, as we sign out, may you be with us, may you strengthen us, may you add more ideas in what we are doing. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. And in your face say amen, please. Thank you. I wish you well.
Amen. Thank you.
Amen.
Thank you. Enjoy your weekend.